Hello, and welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we will air each episode on Monday morning. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you know I'm an introvert and I love to study personality, particularly as it relates to introversion and extroversion. So one time for fun, I attended a lunchtime workshop. It was called Personality Styles in the Workplace. So during this session, we took a quick personality quiz and it identified us either as a bumblebee, a dog, a lion, or a peacock. In the activity, I was identified as a lion. The way the lion was described wasn't exactly accurate, but none of the other animals completely identified with me either. It was supposed to just be a quick introductory quiz, and I hope that no one thought it was very scientific. One of the presenters was a peacock. In my continued exploration of introversion and extroversion, it was really interesting to hear her describe herself. She was definitely an extrovert. She described herself as bubbly, enthusiastic, friendly, outgoing, talkative. She talked about how her social calendar was planned out for months and how any cancellation would be quickly filled. Discussions of our differences like this can be very helpful in understanding our personalities and those of others. I am not bubbly. I'll never be bubbly. And I'm okay if plans get canceled. You know, it's good for me to hear from someone like this because as an introvert, there was a time where I wasn't being as social as I wanted to be. There was a time where I was shy. But I've overcome my shyness and my social calendar is more full than it used to be, but I'm happy with it. But it would never be like she described, where it's planned out for months and cancellations get instantly filled. That's never going to be me, and no, I don't want it to be me. I don't have the desire to be social every minute of the day. I definitely want a balance. I need people, I like people, but I do need some time alone. So just the contrast, it was really good to hear. This reminds me of a favorite quote I have from Lori Helgo in her book Introvert Power. Whatever kind of introvert you are, some people will find you too much in some ways and not enough in others. So again, achieve those things that you want, but just keep in mind that we're all different and your wants and desires may be different from somebody else's. Like, I don't want a social calendar planned out for months that I immediately fill. This other person, if she's achieving that, that's what she wants, that's awesome. So sometimes people are going to think I'm not social enough. People are also going to find me too much when I'm going on about the mysteries of the universe. The point is, I'm never going to be like the peacock, and I don't want to be. I did find the presenter's description very beneficial as I continue my quest to understand myself and others. I was a lion. Part of the workshop was to break out into groups with the other lions. I found some common ground with the other lions, but of course, there was ways that I was different. I can be like a lion. I can be stubborn and very strong in my opinions, very strong in my will. But I have a quiet side, which would make me much more of a quiet lion, or, quiet and strong. So this was a fun event to attend. If you're familiar with the DISC assessment, it really reminded me of that, the 4 different categories. These kind of activities and assessments can be fun, but it's important to remember that it's not about the labels, but it's really helping you gain a deeper understanding as you seek to understand your strengths to get what you need and want out of life, including success in business or finding fulfilling relationships and so much more. So in addition to this activity and the DISC, I've taken so many other personality assessments as either part of my undergraduate or graduate education, professional growth at work. I had at least one time where it was part of a pre employment screening, my own interest. I've taken the strong interest inventory, the MMPI, the FIRO B, Enneagram, True Colors, Real Colors, Standout, How to Fascinate, Holland Self Directed Search, the Kiersey Temperament Sorter, via Character Strengths, and probably a lot more that I can't remember right now. I did have a graduate course in tests and measures, and I have a degree in counseling. I'm certified in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and Strengths Finder, or it's also called now Clifton Strengths. There are usually great resources that come with these various instruments to get to know yourself better and make some kind of action plan. In addition to reading, I find it helpful to attend workshops with these instruments where you can learn from a professional and also the other participants in the workshop. Because when you're talking to someone, it might be helpful to learn from someone that's like you, or you can also see if you're talking about your own strengths and someone that's different from you, like in the peacock example, you can really learn from someone that's different as well and see, yeah, I'm not like that. I don't need to have my social calendar filled out for months, and I don't have that desire, and that's fine. Also, besides a group setting, it could be very beneficial to engage with a coach one-on-one if that's appropriate for you. So I'm thinking a lot about personality as me and my wife are planning to launch a new coaching program to help entrepreneurs do a deep dive into their brand identities. We're going to start with an analysis of the client's own personality and how that translates into their personal brand. I'm excited to combine my experience of personality assessment with my wife's years of experience in branding and marketing to help clients gain an understanding of themselves and how to authentically connect with their ideal clients to grow their businesses. In this and the other work I do, it's all about taking a deep dive into who you are and your strengths and needs, as well as understanding those around you and their strengths and needs. We come to our strengths and needs quite naturally. Like I said, I've been studying personality since college, and I've had many epiphanies around this idea of our strengths are natural to us. One of the biggest examples I have is I have 3 kids. I'm married to a fellow introvert, and we have 2 extroverted children and 1 introverted child. We raise them the same, but they've always had their own uniqueness, their own gifts, and their own needs. They're not alike. Sure, they have some things in common, but they definitely have some differences, even though they had the same upbringing. And my wife will also tell you that she could notice differences even during pregnancy. So, as far as introversion, extroversion, are you introvert, extrovert, or sometimes you might hear ambivert, meaning somewhere in the middle? What does this mean to you? It often seems that people just stop at the label or barely scratch the surface and don't explore what the label really means. I might hear someone make an excuse for something saying, I'm a bit of an introvert, or maybe describing themselves as having the best of both worlds, being an ambivert, and having both qualities of an introvert and an extrovert. I like to be alone sometimes and social sometimes. Does this make me an ambivert? The labels themselves are not helpful unless we know what they mean. To me, it's not the behaviors, but rather, what are my preferences, my strengths, and my needs? As I mentioned, there are many great tools and assessments out there for exploring our personalities and gaining some self-awareness. One of my favorites is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or the MBTI. The MBTI has 16 different personality types. It includes 8 introverted types and 8 extroverted types, designated by a 4-letter code. And The official home of the MBTI is the Myers-Briggs Foundation, where you can pay to take the assessment there. There's also other free versions out there. You can decide what you want to do. Another way where I've learned about the different types is in David Keirsey's Please Understand Me. The second edition is where I'm going to quote from. Please Understand Me Too. The 16 different Myers-Briggs types are explored. Keirsey states, the point of this updated and expanded edition is that people are different from each other, and that no amount of getting after them is going to change them. Nor is there any reason to change them, because the differences are probably good. End quote. And that's the thing. We're all different, and we need to embrace those differences. It's a good thing that we're different. It makes the world go around. So, my Myers Briggs type is INTJ. Sometimes you'll read the nickname is the mastermind. I like the sound of that, mastermind. Just knowing that title, definitely someone could make an assumption about me. But for it truly to be helpful, I need to dive in what's behind the label. Again, what are my preferences, strengths, and needs? There's 4 pairs in the Myers-Briggs assessment. There's an I for introversion, and that's a focus on one's inner world. An E for extroversion, where the preferences is focusing on the outer world. And again, with all these things, we all focus on the inner world, we all focus on the outer world, but where's your preference? What are you likely to do naturally? As an introvert, I'm more often going to be in my inner world than not. The second pair is S for sensing, really paying attention to information that comes through your 5 senses. Or N for intuition. It's a way to gather information from different meanings and patterns. Sometimes it's like you just know things. The next pair, T for thinking. That's if you take a logical and analytical approach to life. It's paired with F for feeling, if you're more in touch with your feelings and the feelings of others. And then the last pair is J for judging, which is living life in a planned or organized manner. And of course, this is not to be, it doesn't mean judgmental, so that's a common misunderstanding. And the pair with that is P for perceiving, which means more flexible and spontaneous. The different pairs form a 4-letter code, like in my case, like I said, INTJ, and there's 15 other types from the pairings. And this can be a very helpful tool in getting to know your strengths, but also your blind spots, and also the best way to build relationships. For example, Keirsey lists that INTJs are head and shoulders above the rest in contingency planning. That's definitely a strength of mine. I work in an environment of limited resources and personnel, and I'm often juggling to determine the most efficient use of the resources at hand. Not only am I good at it, but I thoroughly enjoy using my strengths in this way. This has always been a strength of mine, but I've not always fully understood this gift. And it's important for me to know that I need to contribute in this way. I also need to be recognized by others as being good at this, because I know I can frustrate people who don't see the big picture of things the way I do. And this gift doesn't make me better than anyone, but rather understanding allows me to use my gift and allow others to use theirs. Because again, we all have our different gifts. I'm really good at making these long-term plans. Other people have their own gifts. So by understanding what INTJ means, I may also identify my weakness or blind spots. So Keirsey states, colleagues may describe INTJs as unemotional and at times cold and dispassionate, when in truth, they are merely taking the goals of the institution seriously and continuously striving to achieve those goals. End quote. I need to understand this. This has been something I've been working on for the last few years. I care deeply about the people I work with, my family, my friends, but they don't understand me. It may not always be apparent. Just this past week, I had a situation where I might have appeared to not care, and I needed to explain why I made a particular decision. I do care deeply about other people and the things that we're doing, but I also just need to make sure that I'm coming across that way. So, these kinds of tests can really help you uncover your blind spots and help you understand where you might help people understand you. It's interesting. Introverts, we tend to like deep conversations. And I was having a conversation with someone in my extended family who I know really well. And we're talking, and he made the observation that I started going too deep in the conversation right away. That basically he was saying that I needed to make a little more small talk first. And to me, that was kind of funny because I'm like, what? I know you really well. I just want to talk about this thing. I'm interested in what you're doing and how that thing's going. And to him, we needed to warm up a little bit. Again, we're all different. So it's important to get to know ourselves and help people get to know themselves. But as we take these different tests and read the descriptions, like of the INTJ, we still need to validate it for ourselves. We need to read the description. And as it says, if am I really good at making long-term plans? Yes, I am. But I can think about that and think, is that really true for me? And just keep in mind that any of these assessments, they're tools. They're tools to give you things to think about. But none of us are exactly alike. So there may be a statement in one of these descriptions of these tools about you that you don't agree with, and that's fine. You know yourself the best. And so it's meant to be helpful, but it doesn't define you. You are who you are. It just helps reveal to yourself who you are. But there could be something that you don't agree with, and choose not to make that part of your plan as you get to know yourself. So my wife is an introvert, and her Myers-Briggs type is INTP. So if you remember, mine's INTJ. We're almost identical. The first three letters, INT, are the same. And I think that's part of why we get along, because we do have a lot in common. What's different is the last letter, where she has a P and I have a J. The nickname for this type in Kiersey's book was architect. So what does that mean? She's definitely not making house plans. But she is an architect of many things. She loves to design things. Right now, her professional world is she's an architect of marketing strategy. The architect type, according to Kiersey, is characterized by spatial relativity and systems design. Not only buildings, bridges, and machines, they're also the architect of curricula, of corporations, and all kinds of theoretical systems. They think of themselves as master organizers and base their self-image on being ingenious. They trust reason, seek knowledge. This definitely describes my wife. She's great at spatial design. She's always been the one to read the directions and translate them in how things go together while I struggle to make sure we used all the pieces. But she does like to design, like I said, marketing strategies. She's also really excelled at, designing large group presentations, conferences, and activities while planning how all the smaller components go together. So, again, we're a lot alike, but there's some subtle differences. So, the J, which stands for judging, which again doesn't mean judgmental, it means planned, organized. That's me. I do like to have things planned and organized most of the time. In her case, she can go with the flow, easily adapt, and she can function in a state of organized disorder. She calls it the chaos factor at our house. And of course, that can drive me a little crazy sometimes. But I understand that's part of her personality and the need for order, and her style of organization is very different than mine. Neither is right or wrong. Neither personality type is superior to the other. But the understanding these labels and common descriptions can be helpful, help us understand each other. And I like to think that with my judging or planning, I do bring a little order to her life that she might not otherwise have. If she was sitting here with me, she might object. But I do appreciate the spontaneity she brings to our relationship. And while, I do assessments like the Myers Briggs, I think I'm fun, I'm spontaneous. But in reality, sure, sometimes I am, but for the most part, I really do like things planned out. And the other thing is, I tend to worry more than she does. And so she can bring a calmness and peace to me, and it really works out well. And we love each other, and it's really important to embrace our differences. If either one of us wanted to change the other, if I thought she was going to be organized in the same way as me, or she thought that I was going to be the same amount of spontaneous as her, it wouldn't work. And we probably wouldn't have the same happy relationship that we have, or maybe no relationship at all. But we do understand each other's differences and appreciate those differences. So, as we're talking about these things, labels are simply a means of grouping characteristics better for understanding. But they're not supposed to be used to limit or box us in. And certainly, the label only applies as far as it's true for you. Regardless of your personality type, whether you identify as an introvert, processing information internally, or extrovert, processing information externally, you have specific strengths, but also needs or even weaknesses. You use these labels as tools to help you understand your personality and your unique gifts, and that can help you be more successful. But you're far more than a label, and again, no two people are exactly alike. Find out what's great about you and whether that's part of a label or not. Assessments like the MBTI can confirm some things about yourself that you may already know and help you better articulate and describe your strengths to others. It also may give you some new concepts to think about that you may not have before. It's also important for me to understand factors in my introversion and how that might apply to what I'm reading, especially if I'm taking a different assessment other than the MBTI that doesn't deal directly with introversion, extroversion, but yet those strengths and needs I associate with introversion may be in that assessment, if that makes sense. So, when taking assessments, you may be confirming what you already know. You may have some new things to consider, and also just overall help you know how you can put your strengths and needs into action. Make a plan to achieve your goals. But keep in mind, with any assessment tool, rather than just accepting a label and saying, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert or whatever the particular assessment you take says about you, it's important to understand what that label means for you. Not in terms of limits, but in terms of possibilities. This information, especially when used with the context of understanding your introversion and your individual strengths, is a powerful tool to continue to maximize your performance and your overall happiness. Introversion is still so misunderstood. Sometimes I don't think the term introvert is very helpful. In studying and just observing day to day interactions, I often hear things like, he's a total introvert, which to the person saying that means that that person is shy, which again isn't an accurate use. Or I hear, I'm a little bit of both, as if to apologize for the introverted part. I find it sad that some people think being introverted is a negative thing. Or I hear, I'm an introvert, but can be an extrovert whenever I want to, as if you can just turn off your hardwired personality trait. Sure, you could be outgoing in certain situations. That doesn't make you an extrovert. Or people might say you need to act more extroverted. Being extroverted, meaning that you process information externally, is not a choice. It doesn't mean being gregarious or outgoing. The label itself, if not understood properly, can be meaningless and perhaps even harmful. The label is the label is truly only helpful when you learn what it means for you and use it to get to know yourself and how you operate best. Understanding my introversion has been key in changing my life and helping me be more successful. For example, being introverted does not mean shy, but as an introvert, I usually think before speaking. If you're thinking while others are speaking, it's easy to be seen as quiet or shy. And when you perceive yourself as shy, you often lack the confidence to speak up. Now that I understand how I work, I give myself time I need and insist on it with others. I'm not afraid to let people know I'm thinking or need some time to think. So instead of describing yourself in terms of being an introvert or an extrovert or a little bit of both, describe yourself in terms of how you function best and what you need. Describe what your strengths are. Once you understand your strengths and how to make your introversion work for you, you can determine the best strategies to accomplish your goals, working with your natural gifts instead of against them. Figure out what each day looks like for you, how you will accomplish your goals day by day, week by week. What do you want to achieve? You can do what you want and have what you want, but you may just need to go about it differently than someone else with different gifts would. Here are some examples of some needs and strengths I've discovered about myself. I've learned that I need to carve out a little time each day to be alone. Often this is early in the morning, either at home when my family's asleep or at the office when I go in before anyone else gets there. After too much interaction with draining situations or people, I may need a little alone time to recharge. This is not the same every day, so I need to have some contingency plans. Often, the drive home from work takes care of this, but in our current state, I haven't been driving much, so I need to find a recharge time after work, whether I'm driving home from work or just changing rooms. I may need to make an excuse to slip away from what's happening if I'm being drained for a few minutes, before going on, continuing with the event or going on to the next meeting. It depends on the day and activity. One of my strengths is that I'm very analytical and I'm often able to keep the big picture in my head. I've learned to honor this as one of my strengths and also accept someone without this strength may not fully appreciate it or buy into my well thought out ideas without further explanation from me. I know I have to work hard to get my ideas heard and be ready to explain quickly and succinctly what I have spent hours thinking about. I care deeply about others, but it's not as easy for me to build relationships quickly as it may be for someone else with a strength in this area. I recognize I need to be more thoughtful about building relationships and may need to strategize on how to do this best. With all of this, I choose not to be jealous of other strengths because I have my own unique set. No person has all the strengths. And I think that's honestly so we need each other. And even between introverts, we have different strengths. There are a few things I've discovered about myself as I progress in my journey of self discovery, especially as it comes to introversion. You may relate to some of the things I said about myself and not to others, but the point is, you need to figure out what works for you. I am far from the end of my journey, but since it began, I am so much happier and more successful than I've ever been. There's a lot of great information out there and so many people sharing their experiences. Look into taking an assessment like the Myers-Briggs. It's great to take it in a workshop fashion where you get to hear from other people. Engage a coach one-on-one. Watch some videos. As you read the descriptions of the assessment, validate them for yourself. Is this truly like me, or is this not? What are my strengths? What are my needs? And don't just stop at the label saying, well, I'm an introvert, but find out what that really means. Take action. Put your strengths and your needs into your plans, your daily plans, and your short and long term goals. Keep visiting and reviewing and keep getting to know yourself and how you can be your very best. Find your strengths, embrace what is unique about you, and be your best. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to further connecting with you. Reach out at quietandstrong.com. Email me at david@quietandstrong.com. I will add social media channels to the show notes. Please comment on the social media posts related to this podcast. Send me topics or questions, and we can address those on the show. There's so many great things about being an introvert, and so we need these to be understood. Let's keep the conversation going. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs, and be strong.